I don't normally do videos like this, but I have just watched a recent video by Peter Zeihan on British agriculture, and after I'd picked my jaw up off the floor, I thought there had to be a response. I'm used to dealing with misinformation about various arcane topics, from people pushing a message, people who don't care about truth as long as they can build an audience, all of those people. I would never have placed Peter Zeihan in that category. But this video was off the charts. It's called British Agriculture is About to Suck Even More. Fairly robust title, but I'm sure I could make some sort of case for it, with a bit of imagination and some creative license. Well, let's look at some of this. It starts with a gratuitous insult.
Today we're talking about food in the United Kingdom, and I know, your first instinct is bleh.
Fine, whatever. Obviously, he's alienated a bunch of Brits with that intro, so let's hope he's going to make good, factually based arguments to follow up.
The issue today is that we had protests in London, right outside of Westminster.
These, of course, are the protests that I did a video about a few days ago relating to farmers' inheritance tax, not an issue related to food quality per se.
But we're seeing a lot more aggravation among folks in British agriculture for very good reason. The sector is being phased out.
The sector is being phased out? No. Pretty sure we'd have heard about that.
As a rule, oversimplifying, the more variety you have in climate zones and cultures and soil types, the wider variety of food products you get. And to be perfectly blunt, England is all white people, and the Scottish are also very white, and the Irish are still more white people. And they all are in the same basic climate zone, and so there's a limited number of products that you can grow.
First, what has the skin colour of the British got to do with the food? Just seems kind of weird. Second, according to that map, we share a zone with the whole of France. You know, that country famous for its highly restricted and boring food. So already, you've got to be scratching your head a little bit.
Fast forward to the 70s when the empire was dying and the Brits joined the European Union.
It was actually the common market for European Union came much later, but let's not nitpick.
They lost access to a lot of the stuff around the world.
Wait, what? No, joining the European Common Market did not mean that Britain lost access to foods from around the world. How would you ever get that idea?
But gained access to all the stuff on the continent.
We already had access to stuff on the continent.
And while the European system is definitely white people, there's a lot of different varieties of white people.
Again with the skin colour. What is Peter Zeihan going on about?
And so they were basically able to displace what they lost from the empire with what they could get from the European Union.
Again, we didn't lose anything. I spent the 1980s in Bradford, UK, where they made some of the finest Indian food you could ever get outside of India.
Well, 7 years ago, the Brits voted for Brexit and have yet to put a replacement system in place.
A replacement system for what?
So they're losing access to the European stuff.
No. Brexit does not mean we're losing access to European foods. Neither the standard stuff, which is in any good supermarket, or the specialist stuff, which is available via exactly the same quality importers you could buy from before Brexit. Now, Brexit has led to some added border bureaucracy for sure, some red tape and so on, but losing access to it, needing a replacement system?
And they're falling back onto what the island of Great Britain can produce itself for the first time in about 3 centuries, and they're discovering that it kind of sucks.
What on earth is he going on about? Does Peter Zeihan, who has a big YouTube channel based on his expertise on all things geopolitical, really think that because of Brexit, the United Kingdom is either having to be wholly self-sufficient in food or else its people are going to starve? I mean, I'm right, but it's November right now, yeah? It's not April the 1st?
So the future for agriculture in Britain falls into one of two categories. Either the Brits will seek a free trade zone with the European Union or remembership, or they'll seek something with North America, in which will give them access to that greater variety and that lower cost.
We already import some American foods, of course, nowhere near as much as we do European ones, to be fair.
The problem here is that they're not entering into either of these sets of negotiations as equals. They're entering as a country that has basically shot themselves in the foot diplomatically, strategically, and economically. They're going to have to take whatever is on order. And if there's one thing that the Americans and the Europeans agree on in agriculture, is that it's theirs first.
Look, you may decide Brexit was a mistake. Lots of people do. But no, it doesn't mean we have to take whatever trade deal anyone will give us, else we starve.
So, if the Brits want to join either system, they're going to basically have to sign off their agricultural sector and import pretty much products from whoever their partner ends up being.
And wait, this gets even crazier. So to get a trade deal with Europe or the US, we now have to, quote, sign off our agricultural sector. So we have to, what, wholly outsource our food elsewhere because reasons? What kind of trade deal is he thinking of?
In the case of the European Union, that'll be of higher quality, which is something that their domestic agricultural industry can't compete with.
Where did he get that idea? UK agriculture is of pretty high quality, can compete with the rest of Europe no problem. Never heard that claim before. Look, of course, there are specialist products like Iberican acorn-fed ham and certain French cheeses and so on, but then it's not as though we don't have our own specialities. We export those, we import the others. It's not a problem.
And in the case of the United States, it'll be lower cost, which will be something that their sector can't compete with.
How do American farmers feel about Peter suggesting that British agriculture is substandard, but Americans can only compete with it on cost?
The future of British agriculture is one of two things: purely domestic, high cost, low quality, or gone because they're importing food from somewhere else.
So that's the YouTube hot take of the year. I have no conception of how Peter Zeihan came up with all of this. There is no country in the world I can think of, except maybe North Korea, that operates on this basis. I know I'd done a video before disagreeing with Zeihan about his contention that China was imminently going to collapse. That was a couple of years ago. While China has problems of its own, of course, you'll notice it hasn't collapsed. Not yet. Nevertheless, I thought that was hubristic, but arguable based on not disputed facts. It was a disagreement in interpretation and prediction. Now I've had to add Zeihan's channel to the list of those where I just have to fact check anything I hear on there that I think interesting or potentially important that I don't already know about, because the source has a track record now of being unreliable. A truly bizarre contribution to tack onto the fact that farmers are fighting a change to inheritance tax. Like I said, I don't normally do these sorts of videos, but really, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do.